Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's tutorial, we're going to continue with our blog building a fast back-end application using FastAPI series. So we're going to be using FastAPI, Docker, MongoDB, and we're going to learn a bit of CI/CD using GitHub Actions. So we've already done all of that. We are going to build the API. We have done the deployment to Heroku. We have done the CI/CD to deploy to Heroku. Now I'm going to show how to use Docker and how to use Docker Compose in this tutorial. So guys, if you're new to the channel, please kindly consider subscribing, liking this video, and sharing this content with anyone who you think might find this helpful. Okay, so let's get started to it. So the first thing we're going to do to create a Docker, to use a Docker file. So we're going to go ahead and create a file, and you're going to call this file simply Docker. So I'm going to simply say Docker. Let me just get the spelling right. So Docker, Docker file. So must be called Docker file. And once it's called, once this file is created, once that file is created, we have this file right here called Docker, and it has the Docker logo on it. So let's go ahead and actually create this Docker file, and it's very easy, quite simple, just few lines of Python, but has a bit of few lines of code, but has a bit of explanation to it. So the first thing we're going to say, you're going to use the Python version you can use. So I'm just going to say from, and I'm going to go ahead and use say from, and then space, and then Python in lower cases, and then Python, and then you're going to say this is going to be 3.9.12, so 3.9.12, and that's the Python version that you are going to use. So this is a Python image that you're going to use. So we're going to be using the Python image. Okay, so once we have that done, I'm just going to go ahead and specify another the working directory. So I'm going to say workdir, and workdir is going to be / I'm going to delete this, and workdir is going to be / users users / we're going to call this source and source / app. So we're going to be copying we're going to be working in this directory, and you're going to tell Docker that this is our working directory. So we're going to be / users / source, and then / API. So let me get the spelling of source right. So it's going to be CRC. Okay, source, users / source, and then / API, and that's going to be our working directory. And then you're simply going to go ahead and copy everything. You're going to copy the requirements file. So we're going to copy the requirements requirements.txt file. You're going to copy it into our current working directory. So you're going to use this as a simple full stop, and then / after it. So this means you're going to copy our requirements.txt file, which is this file right here. We're going to copy it inside for our working directory, and our working directory is going on a Docker image is going to be users / source, and then / API. So one thing I forgot to mention is that you need to have Docker installed on the machine before running this, or it won't work. So make sure that you have Docker installed, and to install Docker is different from operating system to operating system. So make sure that you read the documentation on your specific operating system. So after that, you're simply going to say run. So uppercase, and then it's going to say run. You're going to run pip install -r requirements.txt. So requirements.txt, just like that. So this is going to go ahead and install everything inside for requirement.txt. They're going to say -, no cache, okay, no cache for this, and then no cache underscore -dir, just like this. So is pip install -, no cache dir, and then -r, and then requirements.txt. So this is going to install our requirements.txt file. So once that is installed, I'm going to copy now the remaining files into our current working directory. So you might be confused, okay, why did I copy the requirement.txt file and not copy the other files? Okay, the reason why for this is that Docker has a caching system. So Docker starts from the top code, working its way downwards. Okay, so Docker is going to go ahead and get by the Python image, create the working directory, and then copy the requirement.txt file inside of our working directory, which is this directory right here. And then it's going to go ahead and simply go ahead and then install everything inside the requirement.txt file, and then copy the rest of the files. So why do I not copy the rest of the files here? The reason why is that when our requirement.txt file, we will rarely make changes to the requirement.txt file. So all these steps is going to be cached in Docker, meaning that these steps will never be executed unless there is a change in this specific requirement.txt file, right? So we'll only start executing from this way going downwards, or trying to install all the requirements.txt files, all the requirements that are inside of our requirement.txt file only if there's a change inside of our requirement.txt file, and that is rarely going to happen, right? We don't make changes to requirement.txt file very often because the application is quite completed. So but in the other files like the API files, you can make a lot of changes in there. So we don't want to reinstall our applications every time we make changes inside of our API folder or API files, because in there we might go ahead and change things often. But you don't want to go ahead and make changes or try to reinstall the requirements every time you make little changes here. Imagine just go and fix a typo and then you have to go ahead and install all the requirement.txt file instead of a Docker image again. That is time consuming and resource consuming. So just making sure that you copy the file first, okay, and then you install it before you copy the rest of the things, meaning that you only start to execute from here and then go and install the requirement.txt file only and only if there's a changes to the requirement.txt file. If there is no change to it, then all the steps above here will be cached, meaning that we'll just copy everything. If you make changes to any other folder, means you just copy any other file, rather means you just copy the rest of the files, and then you don't need to install the requirement.txt file since you didn't make any change. So because of the caching system, we have to now copy the requirement.txt file before copying every other file, and then install it before copying every other files. Okay, and that's the reason for why we have that step. So make sure that you follow that step. If you don't follow it, nothing is going to happen, but it is time consuming, right? So now we have that. You're going to simply run our application. So whenever you try to run our application, we just say uvcon let me say uvcon, and then we say app .main, and then hyphen app, and then you're saying hyphen host, right, and then we say 0.0.0.0 in any network, and then hyphen port, and then you're going to say port maybe port 8000 rather, so 8000. So it's what we do, right? So now we repeat the same thing in Docker, but you keep spaces, you keep everything inside of code. So this is going to be in its own code, and then comma, and then this is going to be another code, and this is going to have this part of the command. So copy this part of the command and then paste it in its own section. Copy this and simply paste it in here, and this is a command that we basically use to run our application, right? So copy this one as well, and then you're going to say host, copy this. So copy this, just this part, because after host there is space, so copy this and then simply paste it in here, and then after that we need to pass in the 00, so it will be 0.0.0.0.0, and then after that you're going to go ahead and specify the port, so hyphen port, and then the port is going to be the following. So the port is going to be port 8000 right here, port 8000. Yeah, that's basically what we need to do to set that up. So I think after cmd the space, and then we have that information right here. So we're going to go ahead and get our Python image from the Docker, and then simply create our working directory, and then copy the requirement.txt file, and then install everything there to avoid any caching issues. And then after that we'll copy the rest of the files and then simply run our application using this command right here. So that's all we need to do to run our application. So let's go inside of my terminal and let me show you something. So instead of my terminal, I'm just going to go ahead and clear all of this out. And once I have that cleared out, I'm just going to check my Docker version. So I'm going to say Docker hyphen version. So make sure that you have Docker installed, or else this won't work for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and check my Docker version, which Docker version I'm using. So you can see I have Docker. This is my Docker version right here. Okay, so once I have that done, you might have a latest version and it's all fine. Okay, and once I have that done, I'm going to simply go ahead and simply build my Docker image. Okay, so I'm say Docker, and then I'm going to say Docker build, and then you can even do Docker build hyphen help to see all that information. So you can do hyphen help to see what options you have. So you have these options, all of these options right here. So the option I'm going to use is going to be the t tag, and it's going to be the tag tag. So I'm going to say let's clear this out so you guys can see. So I'm going to Docker build, and then I'm going to say hyphen t, and I'm going to specify the name of the app. So I'm going to say test API. So I'm going to call it test API and simply run that. So I got an error. So Docker build requires exactly one argument. Okay, so I see Docker build. Okay, so Docker build, and where do you want to build this? We want to build this in the current directory. So if I put full stop right there, dot, and the reason why is because our Docker every Docker file is in here, so we want to build it inside of our current directory. So I have to say instead of our root directory, so say Docker build -t, and then the the name of the app, and then full stop. Okay, run that, and that's going to go ahead and actually build that for us. So let's just give it a bit of second to run that. So we need permission denied, so I need to use sudo because I'm online sudo. So I need to just simply say sudo here, so sudo space, and then run that command. So it's going to ask me for my password. I'm just going to put in my password and just allow out that. So let's just wait for this to get completed, and this is going to go ahead and simply create this for us our simple Docker image, and that's all. Okay. Yeah, and you can see our Docker application has already been built. So how can you check that information? So you can just say Docker, and then you can say Docker images, Docker image, and then you can image, and then you can do Docker image ls, and that's going to show you, okay, I need to use sudo again, so sorry for that. Yeah, so let me just clear this for now, and I'm going to simply say sudo right here. So sorry for that. Just have to use sudo all the time. So once I have that, that should now check for me, or list for me all my Docker images that I have. And you can see if I scroll up here, we have the test API which image which you just created minutes ago. So yeah, that's how you can use a simple Docker file to create a simple Docker image. Okay, so now we can run this using Docker image using just Docker. But now I want to use Docker compose file to run this. So I'm just going to go ahead and actually clear this up, and I'm going to go back to my VS Code, and in my root directory I'm going to create a Docker compose file. So this file I'm simply going to go ahead and call it a Docker compose, and this way we're going to keep our Docker compose information. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a file here, and it's going to be called docker-compose, and then docker compose.yaml. So you can use YAML like this, or you can use YAML like this, or that's all fine. So yeah, so once I have this my Docker file created, instead of my Docker compose file, I simply want to go ahead and add some information, and this is what you're going to be using to run this. So we're going to say version, and the version you're going to say the version is going to be 3.6. So I'm going to say 3.6, just like that. And then after that, I want to go and specify which services I want to run. So I'm going to say services, and I want to run the following services. So I'm going to have an API service, and this I'm just going to call the service API. So you can call it anything you want, and you want to build it in the current directory where our Docker compose file is. Okay. So once we have that specified, I can go and specify which ports to run on. So I'm going to specify the ports and which ports to run on. So what ports to run on? This basically simply maps the port. Okay, this will simply map the our port to another port. But before we do that, let me just go ahead and specify which env I want to use. So I'm going to say env underscore file, and the env I want to use is the env in the current directory. So API and then .env file. So instead of our APIs folder, we have our env file right here, and that's what I'm trying to refer to by env files. So we're going to have the version that will be 3.6, and then you're going to have a service called API service, and you're going to build it in the current directory, and you're simply going to go ahead in the current directory where our Docker file is, and then you're simply going to go ahead and specify which environment variable to use, and this is the part of the environment variable that we have. Great. So now let's go ahead and try to do the following. So we're going to simply go ahead and simply try to do a Docker compose app. So let me just go back in my terminal, and instead of my terminal, I'm simply going to do sudo docker compose, and then I'm going to docker compose app. And yeah, so sorry, let me just exit out this. I want to actually run this in detach mode. I don't want it right in run it attach mode. So I want to detach it from my terminal. So yeah, so I want to write in detach mode, and that's what the D flag is for. If you want to check more options, you can do -- help, and that should give you more options. Yeah, and you can see that is done right here. So you can see we have Docker blog API -API _1. It has been created. So this blog API is the name of our root directory, our project folder. So API, and then /_API, and that API is the name of our service that we have. We call the service API, right? And then _1. So once we have that done, you can simply do a doc. I'm going to use sudo again, sudo. So I'm going to say sudo and then docker -compose. I want to say docker ps just to check this. So I'm going to docker ps, and it's going to show me all the Docker files and stuff. So we have the name right here, and you can we just created this one called blog API. We created 2 minutes ago, status about a minute ago, and then you can see everything is there. So we have all that information, the port, which port is running on, and all that created at, and then the status and all that information right here. So you can even do to check all of them. So you can do sudo docker, say docker, and then docker say ps-a. So it's going to just return to me all the current. So you can see the information that we have here. So we created this one called Docker API. This is a command to run it, and then we have to say created 2 minutes ago, and then up 2 minutes ago. So it's still running there. So it all works. So if you don't specify the environment variables, if you don't specify this part right here, then it won't work, because you can find the environment variables. But since you specify the environment variable, now you can see our Docker application is up and running fine. So great. So I'm just going to clear this for now, and let's go ahead and add more features to it. So what I simply want to go ahead and do is that if I go ahead, even though this Docker application is running, if I go to localhost at port 8000, I'll fail to get it. So let me just go in here, and this is the deployed version. So I'm going to go to the local one. So I'm going to localhost. So I'm going to say localhost at port 8000. So let me just go to localhost at port 8000 and simply try to access this port. Now you can see we have nothing running, even though the Docker image here is running, but we can access it on our localhost. So what do we need to do to make this actually to work? So to make this to work, we actually need to go ahead and bind the port. So we need to combine the port that is running on our Docker container with our port of our machine. So we say ports, and what we're going to do, this is going to be a list. So we're going to map port 8000 to port 8000. Okay, so we're going to map port 8000 to port 8000, because if you check the Dockerfile, we are running on local at port 8000. So we're going to we're going to connect the port 8000 on the Docker machine, on the Docker container, to port 8000 of our machine, so we can be able to access it on our local on our browser. Okay, so once we have this done, I'm simply going to do a docker sudo, which is sudo. So I'm simply going to go ahead and say sudo docker is going to be docker, okay, just say docker compose, or docker -compose. We're going to bring that docker compose down. Okay, so docker compose down is going to bring down our Docker image down. So I'm just going to run this, and this is going to bring down our Docker image. So let's give it some time, and that should be done. So we have an error here. It says that we have an error in our YAML file. So it says that service API ports contains invalid type. It should be an array. So let's go and look what okay, I forgot this needs to be a space right here. So my bad. And now that I have that done, I'm just going to say so run that command again to bring down my Docker container, or Docker container. Yep. So you can see it's going ahead and stopping the blog API underscore. So once this is done, it should take some bit of time. Okay, once that is done, now we are good to go. So now I'm just going to go ahead and do a Docker compose app. So every time you make a change, you have to bring down the old container, and then do a Docker compose app again. So I'm going to say sudo docker compose, and then app. Okay, just run that again. I'm going to run this in detach mode, so run that again, and now we should now be able to connect our port 8000 on our Docker image to port 8000 on our local machine, so we can be able to access our API running on the Docker container instead of our browser on our local machine, right? So yeah, let's wait for this to get created, and once this is done, we can go ahead and try to refresh the page again. So let's refresh the page. So we can still get access to it. So let's see. We are still failing to get access to it. So let's just I'm just going to go in here. We are mapping port 8000, and let's check if it's running on port 8000. Yeah, that's running on port 8000. So we are failing to get access to this on our local machine. So let me just check if I got that URL right. So localhost at port 8000. So I don't know why that is failing to work. So let me just say 127 7 dot, I think it's .0.0.1 at 8000. Let me just try this. Yeah, no, so now it's working properly. So once it's running, so I'm just going to go ahead and do / and do docs, and then just try docs, and once I run it, I can get the Docker. So this is running on the Docker container, so everything works just fine. So it's running on a Docker container, and you've simply connected our local port 8000 on the Docker container to our 8000 on our local machine, so we can access it instead of our browser. So everything works so far so good. Now let's try to make a change and see if the changes will reflect. So I'm going to go into my routes, and I'm going to go, let me just see it on the browser here. So on the browser, I want to change this and then see if it will reflect. Or even here, let me just go ahead and see, we have hello world here. Let's try to change this, and the blog content, and let's say blog content updated, and let's see if it's going to reflect. So I'm going to go into my routes. Instead of my routes, I'm going to go into the blog part, and then instead of here, I'm going to say updated. So once I updated this, and let me go and refresh this, and let's see if it's going to update. So it doesn't show here. So why doesn't it show? Well, it doesn't show here because we haven't done something called we haven't created something called bind mouth. So bind mouths help us to help our container to keep updated with our code here. So if we change our code, then our container should also be updated. But since now that our container is not actually doesn't have a bind mouth, so it can't really keep track of this. So it can keep track of changes inside of our folder instead of our main machine. So what we need to do is to create a volume, and then simply bind that, create a bind mouth. So to do that is actually very simple. We're going to create volumes. You're going to have a volume here, and then this volume is going to map everything instead of users. users / source, and then / is going to be called app. So it's going to map everything inside. It's going to map everything inside of these two folders. So it's going to map it's going to be sorry, this is going to be actually, I made an error here, so it's going to be / and then this right here, so this, yeah. So it's going to keep track of our current directory, and it's going to make sure that it's in sync with this source users, which is our working directory inside of our Docker container, right? Because it's specified the working directory here. So we're just making sure that everything inside of our current directory is in sync with everything inside of the Docker container directory, working directory. Also, we can specify the RO flag. So the RO stands for read only. This is for security purposes, means that the content inside of this file can only be read only, and cannot be modified, right? So because if you're putting something in a container, you don't want anyone to modify it, right? It's just a security feature. So once we have this done, let's try to bring down our container and then bring it up again. So I'm going to say sudo docker -compose, and then compose, and then down, just like that. So this will bring back down our Docker container, and then from there we'll be able to do docker compose up again to bring it back up. Yeah, so now that our Docker compose is down, we're going to do again sudo docker compose, and then docker compose up again. So run this again, and now it should bring back our, so let me just actually run this in detached mode. So I'm going to say sudo just bring back that, and then I'm going to say -d just to run it in detached mode, because I don't want to be attached here. So once I have this done, I'm just going to wait for this to go to put docker compose up. So yeah, that's done. So I'm just going to go in here and just try to refresh this, and let's see what we get. So the update now should reflect here. Let's wait for this a bit more. Give it a bit more of time. Sometimes it takes some time to load, so give a bit more of time. So once that is done, now, so we can see now it is updated here. So now let's go and see and try to update it again, and let's see what it does. So I'm just going to here and just say updated, and then let's say updated second time. Okay, just update a second time, and now let's see if it's going to now show that change. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh this, and now it doesn't show that change. So what's up? So the reason why it doesn't show that change is because whenever we are running our server, right, we didn't specify the reload flag, so it only runs it and doesn't reload even though there are changes. So to prove this that there are changes, but the changes is just that we need to update our command right here. I can actually go inside of my Docker compose. So I'm just going to go ahead and say the following. So I'm going to say sudo docker, so it's going to be docker and then I'm going to say execute, and then execute, and then I'm going to say -it interactive move, and then you specify the name of that Docker image. I think it's called blog API, and then API, I think that's what it's called. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this. So let's go, sorry, I forgot one of those commands. We're going to say bash, because we want the bash terminal, right? So we want to check it, we want to go inside of the bash terminal of this. So I think it's called test. Let me just say test API, and just run that. So just say docker image ls, and then let's see that I have to use sudo, so sorry for that, and I have to run that. Yeah, so it shows that information, but I actually ran the wrong command. So I have to say sudo say docker, I'm going to say docker, and then I'm going to say ps, and then I'm going to get all of them. So run that, and now we should get the name of that app, and you can use the name of the app to go inside of the bash shell of that specific app. So this is the name of the app name, so name, and the name here is going to be blog API _1. So just I'm going to simply copy that, and I'm going to go. Yeah, and once that information is copied, I'm just going to say the following. So I'm going to say I'm going to bring that command that I ran the previous time, and I'm going to simply change this to be the name of that Docker application. I'm going to paste the name that I copied, and I'm going to do Control Shift and V to paste that information right there, and simply run this. So now this should now take us to the bash terminal of this this thing. Okay, so if I do ls, and you can see in the bash terminal of this, I do ls, I can see I have all these files in there. So I'm going to change directory into my API. And in there, I'm just going to do an ls to view the content there. So it just has the same command as a Linux machine, so I'll use the same command right here. So if I go into change directory into my routes, and instead of my routes I can simply do extended cut and then blog content and then just cut that out. So if I go to the content section, which is this part right, you can see it has been updated second time, but our API did not start, right? So we need to update the command for the running the API, that it should start every time there's a change. So if I go in here and just going to go in here and just go in here and just delete the second time, just update it. And now if once I have that done, I can simply go ahead and simply run that command again. So I'm just going to hit clear this and then simply run that command again. Now this should also be updated, so let me just scroll up here and see here up. So you can see it takes some time. Sometimes it takes some time, so you have to be like a bit patient. So to run this another time and see if those changes actually take place. So run this and let's see if those changes take place. So let's go up here, here to scroll up. Yeah, so you can see now now it has been updated. So sometimes it takes some time to show that change, but now you can see it has been updated. So now it is changing inside of our Docker image, but now it is not refreshing our UVCon server, so it has the old content, right? So great. So now that you have this done, we can just going to exit out of this. I think just type exit and then you can exit out of this. So now we need to change our command in order to go ahead and actually restart our server every time we make changes. So to do that, you can actually go ahead and change the command right here, or you can actually go ahead and do it another way. And I'm going to do it in my Docker compose file, and I'm going to say command, and the command is going to be the following. I'm going to say UVCon, so UVCon, and then you're going to say API.main and then -app colon up and then hyphen host, and then the host is going to be 0.0.0.0, and then you're going to spy hyphen port is going to run on port 8000, right? Because we are binding port 8000 to our local machine. Okay, our machine is also reload. So we're going to say reload, and you're going to pass in that reload flag. So the only difference you're going to have is the reload flag, which is going to enable our server to reload whenever we make changes. So now that I've done that, I'm going to sudo docker compose docker-compose, and then I'm going to say down, just like that. So this is going to bring back down our Docker container. Okay, yeah, so you can see that container is down there. So once you have the container, then we can do a simple sudo docker -compose, and then you're going to hit up. You're going to run this in detach mode. So run this again. Once this is started, now we should be whenever we make changes, now our server should restart itself automatically. Okay, so let's just wait for this to get created. Yeah, so that is done creating, and now let's go ahead and simply let's see what we have actually in our blog. Okay, so here we have updated. Now we're going to say a second time, just like that, and then let's go back in here, and now you see it is updated second time without the second time. So now let me just refresh this. Okay, it takes a bit of time, so let's just give it a bit of time. Refresh this. Okay, now it's on. So now you can see now it should now be updated second time, and every time you make change, it should now pick up on those changes because the server is restarting every time. So if I delete this second, and then if I go in here and make a refresh this, it should now see those changes. So if I refresh, now you just see updated second, there's no time, right? So now our code here is now in sync with what you have on our Docker image. Okay, so if I now do this and now bring it back to what it was normally, now it should now be blog content. So everything works as expected, and that's how we can simply create a bind mount in our Docker compose file and simply restart our server every time we make changes to that. So that's how you can go ahead and create a simple Docker and Docker compose file for our API. So in the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to deploy this to Heroku using CI/CD, add it to our Heroku, add it to our GitHub Actions, and be able to deploy this to Docker Hub using a CI/CD tool, which is basically GitHub Actions. So we're going to use GitHub Actions and learn how we can deploy our Docker image to Heroku. So guys, thanks for watching this tutorial. This is all we are going to go over in this tutorial. If you enjoyed this tutorial so far, give this video a thumbs up, like the video, share this video with anyone who you think might find this helpful, and don't forget to like, to share, and to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Keep safe.